Greetings and salutations, my dearest friends. My name is Samantha, and today I'm going to be doing a romance hot take video where I talk all about trigger warnings in romance books. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome and welcome back to my channel and welcome back to Vlogmas. I am posting videos every single day in the month of December. My voice sounds a little weird because I have a cold. I've had a cold for about a month now and I just cannot shake it. It's not, okay, I've been tested, it's just like a really harsh cold that I'm going through right now, but I feel a little bit better, so we're filming. I have wanted to film this video for a really long time. I love filming my romance hot take videos. If you are not familiar with my channel, I occasionally post these videos that I call hot takes, and I literally just sit down and talk about things going on in the romance community. Sometimes I talk about unpopular book opinions, sometimes I just talk about recent events, and it's really just a platform for me and for the people watching this video to kind of have an open discussion within the romance community, because I feel like romance readers are so intelligent and it's such a vast genre that there can be a lot of insightful conversations because we know romance is so much more than a happily ever after. There is so much good work within the romance genre, and I think videos like this kind of broaden that and bring light to that, and also just have really cool conversations. I'm the type of person that can talk about romance for hours. That's why I have a booktube channel. Today the topic is trigger warnings. I'm gonna talk about trigger warnings, my personal opinion on them, importance they have to the romance genre, how we can see that play out in newer releases, etc, etc. I did a little poll on Instagram where I asked you guys, what do you think of trigger warnings? Are they important? So I will also be talking about some of your guys' opinions in this video. Really quick, just an overview. What are trigger warnings? Trigger warnings are, you can see them in pretty much every piece of literature, not just the romance genre. And it's basically a section that authors take to give the readers or the viewers a warning, like this may have some contents that could be potentially triggering. Now we see this in movies, right? Movies are rated R or PG-13, and it says in the beginning of the movie, may contain potentially violent scenes, may contain scenes with sexual nature. Whatever the situation is, I know there's like a certain amount of curse words a movie can even have in it before it gets to PG-13 or R. TV shows do it, podcasts do it, sometimes even YouTubers give trigger warnings on their content. So you will see this happen in different pieces of literature, but we're going to talk about it mainly in romance because that's obviously what I read the most. Trigger warnings can be a broad term because there are many scenes in a book that might potentially be triggering for a group of people. It doesn't mean across the board that this scene is going to bother everyone, because as readers, we all have a personal opinion. So there are certain things that might not bother me, but it may very well bother you. So the trigger warning really isn't intended, I don't think, to be a spoiler. I think it's intended to give the reader an opportunity to know what they're getting into the book. If you know that you have a specific trigger warning and you see that a book has it, you might not pick that book up. And that can be beneficial for you because you're not reading something that's going to trigger you, but it also could be beneficial for the author because then they are being very clear on what to expect from their book. And I feel like that will eliminate getting poor ratings because someone read the book and didn't expect what was in it. So I'm going to go into more detail about that really quick. So, how should I start this video? I think I'm gonna start with my personal opinion. Okay, so trigger warnings. I think trigger warnings are important. In fact, I think they should be required. I know that might not be a popular opinion, but that is why we do this video. I think they should be in every romance book. They're in every movie. They're in every TV show. I think there should be an excerpt allowing the reader to know what they're getting into, just like when you have a synopsis. So when I first started my channel, I didn't understand the importance importance of trigger warnings. I was looking at everything from a personal experience. So for me personally, if you ask me what were my trigger warnings, I could honestly tell you I don't have many. There are many books that I can read and maybe I'll be like, that's not my kink, or I didn't really like that. But there are very few things that are very triggering to me. I read a vast majority of romance, paranormal romance, fantasy romance, historical romance, dark romance, and I find that I just enjoy the journey. I enjoy the wild twists and turns in a romance book. So for me, I don't have many trigger warnings. But we have to realize what I think is so key is that when I first started my channel, I was not giving trigger warnings on books that I was recommending. I didn't understand the importance of it. Even trigger warnings have become more easily accessible within the last few years. So when I was talking about books, I was just giving you the synopsis, I was giving you my personal rating. I wasn't really feeling like I had an obligation to line out the trigger warnings. Now, do booktubers have an obligation to their audience to provide trigger warnings? Do authors have an obligation to provide trigger warnings to their readers? I think yes. And the reason I think so is because, again, you are allowing that reader to make an informed decision if they want to read the book. I think trigger warnings are spoilers, and here's why. If as an author you use a trigger warning for your major plot twist, I think that's bad writing. And I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but your one huge plot twist, the end all be all to your story, should not be a trigger warning, like sexual assault, surprise pregnancy, mental illness, loss of a loved one. That should not be your only shock factor in your book. It shouldn't be the thing that carries your story. I personally feel like that's not strong writing and storytelling. There's so much more to a romance. I don't think knowing that trigger warning is going to take away from the story. But that, again, this is my personal opinion. So now, when I do my videos, I try to be so extensive on the trigger warnings that I do. And if I'm not entirely sure, even if I'm doing a TBR video, which I don't do those often because of this reason. Somebody asked me, why don't you do TBR videos? And it's because TBR videos, you don't know anything about the book. You're just talking about books that are potentially interesting to you. You're going off a synopsis or a recommendation or a Goodreads review that could be wrong. And I don't want to give someone an idea of a book and get them all excited about it and it have a trigger warning or it to be really bad. So I don't do TBRs often. When I do recommendation videos, I try to be very extensive on my trigger warnings, or even say, hey, this has trigger warnings. Check out the Goodreads reviews. Check out the author's note. Because I don't want to recommend something that could be harmful to someone. I think that they are vital. I think they're important. I think they should be necessary. I don't think that they are spoilers. Another thing to mention is that just because it's not a trigger warning for you doesn't mean it's not for somebody else. So I go back to saying that I don't have a lot of trigger warnings, right? But I know that there are certain things that might bother someone. What upsets me is a lot of people say, oh, trigger warnings are spoilers, or that's not even that big of a deal. You don't get to decide that. Trigger warnings are meant for the people that content could be triggering for. I don't want to derail this whole video, but I want to give an example of what I'm talking about. So an example of this is the Bridgerton series. I have it right here. Let me show you. Everybody knows what this book is, The Duke and I, the Bridgerton series. This is a wonderful Netflix series. Julia Quinn is a fantastic author. This series is so well written. But in this book, the very, very first book, at the end, there is a trigger warning for sexual assault. And he kind of takes advantage of a situation and puts Simon in a position where he is forced to have children against his consent. Now, a lot of people were arguing back and forth if this scene was okay. A lot of people didn't even want to say what that scene was because they kept saying it was a spoiler. Whenever I talked about this book, I always said the trigger warning because I think it is so important. Just because you decide that that scene was okay for you, you decide that that scene was not sexual assault, or maybe it's something you can even look over, doesn't mean that everyone will have that same experience. Everyone is entitled to their own trigger warning, their own trauma, and that warning of content is meant for that person. So when I'm giving trigger warnings, it isn't because that's my personal trigger warning. It is because I want to give the warnings for the people that need it. I think why I take it so seriously is because when we think about trigger warnings and where they're rooted from, not always, but oftentimes it could be rooted in trauma. It could be rooted in somebody's personal experience and what they've been through. They don't want to read something with sexual assault because they've experienced something like that. Maybe they don't want to read a book about infertility because they're currently struggling with infertility and conception. Maybe they don't want to relive the harsher parts of their life. Maybe that's not what romance is to them. They don't want a dark romance. They want something sweet and an escapism kind of aspect. So that's why I think it's so important. And that's why I think, like, as an individual, you can't decide if a book is deserving of a trigger warning just because you don't have that trigger warning. You know what I mean? Like, I think we should just have a across the board warning, and readers can read that, be informed and knowledgeable of the book that they're going into, and then decide if they're going to read it. So that is my personal opinion on trigger warnings. Now, I know I said I don't have many trigger warnings. My only trigger warning sometimes is just sexual assaults and consent, dubious consent. Not a fan of it. I'm talking about sexual assaults and lack of consent between our actual couples. Whether I'm reading a straight romance, sapphic romance, male-male romance, whatever it is, I'm talking about the consent between our couple. Now, a problem I have with some older historicals is that exactly. A lot of older historicals lack consent, and a lot of them are not even dubious. It is straight up sexual assault. It is straight up rape, and that irks me to a level I cannot even put into words. It's very rare that you will find me rating one of those books highly. This is another conversation that can be had, is a lot of people will read an older historical that maybe has dubious consent, kind of like the Bridgerton series, or some example, not the series, I'm sorry, the only book is this one. And I love this series. I'm not talking trash about it. I'm only using it as an example because it's popular and I'm sure a lot of people can maybe know what I'm talking about. But some examples of it is Johanna Lindsey. She wrote a Viking romance that is just straight up assault. On a page, the heroine claims that the hero rapes her. I'm talking about some old Kathleen E. Woodiwiss books where on a page, the heroine claims that she was sexually assaulted by our hero. It is so hard to create a character arc and go back from that. Judith McNaught, she has some books like that as well. And a lot of people will not like that I rate those books lowly because they want to say, and this is okay if you feel this way, I'm just saying my personal opinion at this point, that those books were written in a different generation, a different era. And I'm like, I don't like that excuse. I don't think books get a pass just because they were written 40, 50 years ago. If there are some slight generational gaps, like with technology or phrases or things like that, then yeah, obviously it was written in a different time. But core moral things like consents and trigger warnings, I feel like older historicals should not get a pass for. That's my personal opinion, and it's something I've struggled with because I'm such a huge fan of historicals. And I can really appreciate the work and the history behind some of those classic authors like Kathleen E. Woodiwiss. She was such a trendsetter for the romance genre, so I can appreciate what she did for the genre, but I can also separate my personal feelings on the consent issues in her books. So that's kind of how I feel just a little bit about trigger warnings. I feel like that could be in a whole other conversation. Like, do you guys think that older historicals or older books that were written in the 70s and 80s and 90s, do you think they get a pass if we read them in today's climate and they don't hold up? I don't think they do. I don't think they do. Whew. We're moving on, guys. This is gonna be a long video. Moving on. Here's the problem we're coming across now. Amazon and some booksellers are banning books because of the trigger warnings. And now this is the issue, right? So now authors are scared to give trigger warnings on their books, especially darker romances, right? Because Amazon sees those keywords, dubious consents, BDSM, all of these different things, and they're like, oh, that's a bad book. We're gonna put it in the Amazon dungeon. If you guys don't know what the Amazon dungeon is, it basically means if you search the title, search the author, you cannot find the book. The only way you can find a banned Amazon books, if they still choose to sell it through Amazon as a retailer, is through a direct link. If a book is banned, the only way that you, I'm out of breath right now. I need a second, guys. Okay, this cough is really taking me out. If a book gets banned, the only way that you can find it is if you have a direct link, normally provided by the author. But if you search it, not there. If it was on Kindle Unlimited, I don't know. That's a good question. If you're an author, authors aren't probably watching this because I'm like the smallest channel ever. I don't know if you're on Kindle Unlimited, will they take you off Kindle Unlimited? I think they will. I think they will. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But I know that you can be banned because of the content. And a lot of times trigger warnings are put in front of a book. They're like the very first page, or as a reviewer, usually before I review something, I say trigger warnings, list the trigger warnings, then I do my review. So it's honestly most of the time in the very, very beginning. So now Amazon is kind of looking at those keywords and banning books, restricting books, and really just being gatekeepy. And I feel like the book what is the word? It's escaping me, gosh. The book industry. The book industry can be very gatekeepy at times. Oh, these are the acceptable reading material. A very bad stigma towards romance. So I think it can be very gatekeepy when retailers are doing that, but unfortunately they are. And I think this is also kind of leading into why we're switching to illustrated covers, because covers that are very sexy and abs and clinch covers and couples obviously making out on the front of a book, which I love, a lot of booksellers are saying this isn't marketable anymore. This isn't, you know, acceptable. We want more discreet covers, and that's why we're getting these illustrated covers. I think they're doing that with trigger warnings as well. They're censoring the type of content that is being mass produced. It's why you kind of see most trigger warnings in like indie romances. More darker romances are going more indie, and where traditionally published books, not that they're bad, there are very many awesome, that's not good grammar, I'm sorry. There are really great traditionally published books out there, but sometimes they can be a little watered down as far as like the darker content or even the steamier scenes, sex on page. A lot of them are fade to black because of this reason. What are authors supposed to do? Readers are expecting them to have trigger warnings at this point. I think it is an expectation most readers have. So how can they appease to that or really cater to that, but also not have their books banned? And I don't know what the right answer to that is. I think that Amazon is doing a huge disservice. Romance is the #1 genre as far as book sellings of ebooks. It makes millions of dollars in revenue for the book industry. So the fact that they're censoring it and gatekeeping it is really unfortunate. I think maybe a kind of workaround would be to have trigger warnings at the end. So have an author's note at the end, and then readers can quickly read that and then go back to the book. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer to that is, because I'm not in marketing or in publishing or an author myself, so I don't really know what would be the best solution for that. Okay, now I'm gonna just talk about your guys' opinions and then we'll end this video because I'm really out of breath. I thought I felt better, but I really don't. Somebody said, I think they're spoilers, but understand the need for them. So this opinion I disagree with, but I understand it. Example of this, they didn't use an example, but I'm gonna use an example, is surprise pregnancy. I think surprise pregnancy should be a trigger warning because it is a trope that many readers have expressed extreme disinterest in. You either love it or you hate it, there's no in between. So if I read a book and I did not know there was surprise pregnancy in it and it just comes out of nowhere, it's truly a surprise, I'm gonna rate it lowly because it's an experience I did not sign up for. I do understand and respect this opinion. It's an opinion that a lot of people said actually, and I think the solution to that is most authors now include trigger warnings in an author's note. Most book readers who give trigger warnings will say like TW or trigger warning in front of their review. Skip it. Don't read it. Like literally just skip it and then you won't be spoiled. I think the trigger warnings are there for the people who need it, and if you don't want it, skip it. So the next opinion says, I appreciate them, but people list too many. Interesting. They say, I think we should stick with the heavy hitters only. Again, understand this opinion, but what is a heavy hitter? Who is deciding what's a heavy hitter? That's my whole issue with being like picky choosy on like what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. I don't think it's up to one individual person to decide what is a heavy hitter or what is potentially trigger warning because everyone has different levels that they're willing to go through. So who decides that? I don't know. I think we should just have a whole list of them so people can decide what they want to read. Other people said they are definitely spoilers in their opinion. Somebody else says that they are spoilers. A lot of you guys think that and feel that way, and that's totally valid. I say just skip the author's note. Just don't read them. Someone said we need them. Traditional publishers need to get on it. Good point. Do traditionally published books give trigger warnings? I've seen very few. It's mostly indie authors, because I feel like those authors really listen to the romance community and they're like romance readers themselves. So we're traditionally published. I'm not trying to do like which one is better or anything like that. But yeah, that is a good point. Although I think traditionally published book, like I've never read a traditionally published book that was like exceptionally trigger warning. I kind of feel like now they're kind of watered down. That's a whole other topic, right? Someone said they love them. They think they're extremely useful. They have anxiety, so mental illness is a trigger. See, this is what I'm talking about. So we need to really take in consideration those people and really just, you know, take care. We want to take care of our romance readers and make sure that everyone is safe with what they're reading and feels safe. So that's so important. Thank you for your comment. Someone says, I think it's a good thing to have. I personally don't like to read books with child abuse or rape. Neither do I. That is definitely a trigger warning for sure. Someone said, put trigger warnings in the back so people can look if they want, but others won't be spoiled. That might be a solution, right? It's not the first thing you read. People won't be spoiled. A lot of people say they're spoilers. That's surprising. But again, totally valid, totally valid. This is my video. I had so much fun filming this video, even though I was like coughing and hacking like an old hag throughout it. So I'm sorry that I sound like this. I'm sorry that I went on a whole rant, but it was so much fun. I love filming these videos. So anyways, let me know what other topics you want me to talk about. I think my next topic might be indie books versus traditionally published books, because I think that would be a really cool topic. As always, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend time with me. It means the world to me. I hope you guys are all staying happy and healthy, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video.